Hello, today we are playing Subway Builder in Chicago. We're going to be playing on normal mode and we're going to build a pretty accurate replica of the real Chicago CTA system. So here you can see the Chicago map. You can see the population density here in the loop, and along the lakefront is where we have the most density. Each of those gray circles is a population center, so the bigger the dot, the more people. And this is showing residents across the whole region. So it's not just in the city, it's the whole region of Chicago. And if we click on the worker circle here, you can see where all the workers are. So it's pretty concentrated in the one downtown area, the loop. See these giant circles as we zoom in. Each of those is a bunch of employment centers. So we have to get the population, the residents connected to the working areas. And you can see it's not only focused on downtown, there's a lot of employment centers around the whole region. You can see O'Hare here, the airports have a lot of workers, and even out in the suburbs you can see these little clusters of employment centers. Up here you can see the Northwestern and Loyola, I think, and down here you see the University of Chicago. So we got to connect all of those areas, so we're gonna get working on that. But first, let's look at, since we're playing on the realistic mode, we have to build something profitable. So I'm gonna start building the red line. You can see here the red line has the most riders. This graphic I found on the internet shows ridership numbers. So the red line being the most populous has the most people. A drop off there in COVID. This is over the years, the ridership. But red line definitely the busiest, followed by the blue line. So let's start with the red line. And we're going to try to be as accurate as possible to the city map. So you can see the red line here runs north and south mostly through the loop down to the south side, and you can see the red line extension that's hopefully going to be built in the future. And you can see the red line shares tracks with the brown and purple. And we're just going to take a quick look at the ridership numbers for red line to see which stations do we want to build first, what's going to be the most profitable. So you can see the red line station ridership numbers here. The Howard has quite a bit of ridership. As we go down, you see big numbers here for the red line stations. Pretty much confirms that this is going to be the best and most profitable line to start with, since we are playing on the realistic version. Okay, I'm going to pull up Google Earth, and here you see the loop, the densest part of Chicago. We're going to start in pretty much the central area. So here, I think what we're going to start on is this Chinatown station, just south of the loop. You can see it's a nice 2-track station, which branches off in the north. We're going to follow the red line tracks here, and then you can see where it goes underground to head into the loop. So it follows underneath here, connects up to the Roosevelt station here. This is getting into the south loop, and you can see the orange and green line station above ground, but the red line is underground here. As we head north into the loop, the red line runs under State Street here and parallel to the above ground tracks for the orange and green, and then later you can see the loop above ground, but the red line is all underground here through the loop. Under State Street, we've got several stations along State Street, which we're going to be building. And there you can see the station at Lake Street, which is actually going to be rebuilt. I think it's actually closed right now for a few years. And we continue north along State Street into River North. And this is a pretty dense part of Chicago. This is the densest part. This is the Chicago Avenue station we're going to be building. You can see the station there, some nice bus lanes. Continuing north, State Street, Red Line is still underground here. And it'll make a turn over to the left along this path and up, making its way to the quad track section. So this is a pretty cool part about the red, brown, and purple lines is they are quad tracked here. You can see the red line comes up through the middle two tracks from underground to above ground, and on the outside two tracks are the brown and purple. So we're going to be building quad tracks for this section. And Fullerton station right here. I think we'll be building up about from the loop to Fullerton, maybe further, and following along the tracks here. It's a pretty dense neighborhood area. You can see the brown purple line stations where the red line doesn't stop. It passes through like an express in this section into Belmont. So we have the two island stations with the two middle tracks for the red line. And here, this is pretty cool. It's going to be fun to build. This was recently built a few years ago, the red purple modernization project with the Belmont flyover. So that's one of the coolest parts of the whole CTA system is I'll get into that later when we build it, but here you can see we continue up to Addison. The red line passes Wrigley Field. It's a really dense area. This is like the densest part of Chicago. The further you get away from the lake, the density drops off pretty quick. But we're starting with the dense area. That's going to make the most money in the game. And we are playing for a profit. We might go a little bit further south today when we're building the red line. So I'm going to show you a little bit further south what it looks like. That's the Chinatown station here. You can see the McCormick Convention Center on the right. There's a huge highway that goes through the middle of this area, kind of separating the South Loop from the neighborhoods to the south, like Bronzeville. Pretty historic neighborhood, but all these urban renewal projects in the 20th century really just demolished neighborhoods, mostly black and immigrant neighborhoods. So that's what you can see. It's pretty visible just in the physical layout of these areas. You see the red line runs in these stations in the middle of the highway. They're really, I mean, it is convenient, but it's also not very pleasant to use when you're walking in the middle of the highway and waiting for the train with all the cars passing you. It's not very pleasant as far as design goes. And you can see how much further spread out everything is because of the auto-centric infrastructure. There's a lot of empty lots all along the highway where they built this thing through what used to be more of a connected street grid. Looks like a train facility. A lot of industry mixed in down here in these neighborhoods that you don't see so much on the north. There's some clusters of density, as you can see. Get further south, it's a little more intact. The street grid. This is the 95th Street station. It's actually a pretty cool looking building. It's got a lot of nice public art, and it's actually cool for being in the middle of the highway. And in the future, the red line extension's gonna go follow these railroad tracks to connect up to Altgeld Gardens here. We're not building that today, but I'll probably build it in the future after we finish building the whole existing network. Okay, history lesson over. Let's start building. I'm gonna start at the Roosevelt station. You can see these giant population clusters. So this is the best place to start, I would say, if we're trying to capture the most dense population and employment. So there's actually a lot of stations really close together in the loop under State Street. I'm just trying to spread them out evenly so we get a good distribution. We continue up north into Grand. So the Grand station is the first one in River North. Continuing north, we build Chicago, which we saw earlier, Chicago Avenue. Making our way north, we have to curve around onto Division, which it's a really tight curve here. We're using the cut and cover construction method, which means we're not building a tunnel. We're cutting up the road and building under it, and then we'll later cover. So that's the much cheaper way than boring a deep tunnel, but that means we have to work within the road right away, and we have to work around the buildings. So that ends up with some tight curves where the buildings are really close together. So the trains will have to slow down quite a bit to go around those curves. It's the only downside, but it is much, much cheaper. The 4-track station at Fullerton. Let's look in Google Earth again. This is the Lincoln Park area. It's got some nice historic buildings. Really tight right of way between the buildings for 4 tracks to fit. It's actually pretty hard to build the quad track stations in the game because the buildings are so close next to the station and the tracks. If you've ever been in this part of Chicago, you know the trains are really loud. So that is one of the downsides to having the elevated rail. It looks really cool, but it is very loud, especially on these old tracks. These are quite old. Here I'm just lining up, connecting the red line underground, and I'm just plotting out how we want to build the brown line and purple line tracks above ground later. You can see they connect up nicely there. So we have that for later when in the next episode, we'll build probably either the blue or the brown and purple lines. I'm not sure yet. Let's see how this goes. But I'm just changing the names so they're accurate. And checking the map again, just to double check the route. Yeah, we're gonna build a little bit further north until we run out of money. As you can see in the bottom, we have $3 billion to spend. So we're gonna basically build $3 billion worth of rail, however far that gets us north and south. That's what we're gonna do this episode. Those are not exactly realistic costs. I think the game bases the cost off of Mediterranean countries' prices, like I'm not sure if it's Spain or Italy, countries that were able to build rail a lot cheaper than the US. So I think it would cost way more than $3 billion to build this all from scratch now. But this is a game, so we're just going to play within the constraints of the game. And this is the Belmont flyover I talked about earlier. Really cool infrastructure project. I'm not going to build the flyover yet. I'm going to build the original layout where the brown line just crosses over. And when we get to building the brown and purple lines in the future, then we'll do the flyover, because I think it'll be cool to see how that affects the operations once we change that. Anyway, continuing north past Addison, this is Sheridan. I think this is one of the most problematic areas on the red line because you can see how tight those curves are. The trains really have to slow down around those curves. And I think we have enough money to go up to Wilson. So we're actually getting pretty far north. Connecting all this up. And I think we're gonna end at Wilson and see how much further we can go on the other side. Let's take a look on the map. We can build it down to the Chinatown station we saw earlier, which has great views. It's a really nice area, except for the I don't like to see parking lots next to the train. That's not good land use practices, but we are working with what we got. So you can see the station actually connects up with the above ground tracks that go into the loop, but we're just building the red line now, which splits off and goes underground. So making that transition from 5-meter elevated to a tunnel. And we're actually building a deep tunnel under this part of the tracks to connect up. And let's see how far south we can go until we run out of money. So we're actually going to make it to the White Sox Stadium here at 35th Street. The cool thing about the Red Line, I think it's one of the only transit lines in the country that has 2 Major League Baseball stadiums. So we're connecting up the Cubs Stadium with the White Sox Stadium. And here's that station at 35th. I'm just building it in the middle of the highway, avoiding those buildings so we don't have to demolish the buildings, because you do have to pay when you run through buildings in the game. So we're trying to save money so we can build as much rail as we can. We're going to go a little bit further south to the next station. You can see how much further away all of those dots are. The population is just a lot more spread out down here. And obviously if you have a 10-lane or more highway surrounding the station, it's going to be more spread out because people have to cross under or over the highway to get to the station. And then there'll be a lot of auto-centric infrastructure surrounding the stations, which are not great for people walking or taking transit to connect to the Red Line station. It's a cool passover with some other rail lines in the area. You can see the Green Line, the Metra, commuter rail, and freight rail. There's a lot of rail passing through this area. And we'll see how far south we can get. I think we have enough money for 1 or 2 more stations. Oh, this made me mad when I saw it. There's a McDonald's drive-thru next to the station there, which is just not the best use of land, but we make use of what we got. We will see that people still do use this line. It is pretty heavily used. Once we run the simulation, you'll see that this is kind of the backbone of the whole CTA system. Okay, so here we can actually start mapping out the service pattern of the Red Line. It stops at all of those except for those bypass stations near the Fullerton and Belmont stations. I'm checking the service pattern to see how many trains I should put. I know we don't have the full line built yet, but it looks like overnight it's about every 15 minutes, and middle of the day a lot more frequent. So we're going to start with 10 10 trains in the rush hour. I think that's enough for now. Would not be enough in real life, but I'm just letting the simulation run. Looks like we're having some capacity issues. I think we're either going to need more trains or longer trains, because you can double the amount of cars if we buy more trains once I have more money, but it's working pretty well for now. It looks like we're making a profit. All right, so let's take a look here. See the red dots show people driving, and the blue show people taking transit, and purple means you have a pretty even mix. So we want to see blue all along our new transit line here. That's how we know it's working. So you can see all those moving red dots. Those are people going from the train to either work or home, or vice versa. So we're getting a lot of activity along the red line. I'm just checking a few spots to see. The income distribution shows who takes the train by their income level. You can see along that whole line, all those blue dots are taking transit. So that's pretty good for just one line, like that whole dense area, and even some of these less dense areas on the south are taking the red line. So that's pretty good, but in the future we're gonna look at the whole region, not just the cities. That's all for today. We've got most of the red line built. We still got a bit more to build in the next episode. Maybe we'll start on the next lines too, but let me know if you like it. Let me know if you want to see more, and we'll stop there for today. Thanks for watching.